you're making a decision today that has an impact in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And you're not going to know all of those answers. If we had that looking glass into the future, I would have won the lottery right now. And it's being able to have that vision and being able to recognise that over time that vision might adapt.
Land value is only one way for the public sector to get the returns from what it's putting into the JV. So by being partners 50-50, we share in the profits. So it's not that obsession just about the land value. You know, it's almost like going on a date before you get married. It's about just as much the people and who you're going to be working with as it is about what's in the contract or the tender document.
Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge sponsored by Redloft and Vistry. And every month I've been visiting a different council to find out what works and what has to change to get more homes built. But not this month, because the local elections mean that we haven't been able to speak to councils. So instead, we've visited the London Legacy Development Corporation to find out how they're getting more homes built. And Farrah Hussain from Vistry and Darren Parker from the LLDC were kind enough to spare some time to talk a bit about the partnership that they've forged and their route to getting more homes built.
So I'm Darren Parker. I'm Executive Development Director here at the London Legacy Development Corporation.
Hi, I'm Farrah Hussain. I'm Head of Development, working for Vistry Group.
And where are we? What is this place up in the sky?
Up in the sky. Well, we're in the Orbit Tower in the heart of the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. And the reason that we've bought here is just behind us is one of our new legacy neighbourhoods, Pudding Mill Lane. So Pudding Mill Lane is a new neighbourhood centre of over 1,000 homes around the Pudding Mill Lane DLR station. But not only is it homes, we're planning a new health centre, nursery, retail and community space, and then a large employment hub as well, kind of connected to the park's new designation as one of London's 3 innovation districts.
Fantastic. And what's Vistry's role in that, Farrah?
So we're a JV partner with the LLDC to deliver the Pudding Mill Lane scheme. We are responsible for the delivery of the project, working alongside our JV partner, LLDC. And we're excited to be a part of delivering on the legacy here.
What's the scale of it? How many homes?
It's about just under 1,950.
So what's the point of a joint venture from your point of view?
So I think it's from a partnership perspective, it's fantastic to have shared expertise and shared vision, which we have as part of our business case for Pudding Mill Lane. It's good to see other perspectives between public and private sector as well, and to learn from each other of what works. And LLDC bring a unique aspect to this in terms of the history of the site and the wider site context and how that fits into Pudding Mill Lane's delivery as well. We are excited and very passionate to see the delivery of housing, but also all the bits in addition to the housing that make it work, the community, the health centres, the commercial that comes in and starts to make the place feel like a home as well.
And what's different about working on the Olympic Park? I take it it's new and so on, but what do you feel is different about working on the Olympic Park compared to all the other projects you've got?
It's, for me, the thing that I find most exciting about working in housing is that it's tangible, and it impacts so many people. And the Olympic Park is definitely an example of that. I think most people will have a memory of coming here and visiting here, whether it's to go to the ABBA Voyage. I've been 3 times. It's great.
3 times? Do you know all the words now?
Yeah, I knew them before, but I know them now. But also going to the Olympics and the history that has. My hairdresser actually was one of the first residents to move in the Olympic Park. Right. And even he has his story of how it works and how he's created a home here, and it was his big move into London. And there's so many tangible stories like that, which make it such an exciting place to be delivering a little piece of the community on.
So we'll come back to that placemaking piece in a minute, Darren, because I want to ask you about meanwhile uses. But can you just take us through the kind of joint venture process? Presumably you're in a joint venture as the landowner because it unlocks the development.
Correct.
You couldn't do it otherwise.
I think that's it. It's a large undertaking, 1,000 homes and a neighbourhood centre, and it was a choice to move away where we were just a landowner entering into development agreement with a third party developer. What we wanted to do is be in the partnership. So the joint venture approach means that we're in it 50-50 with Vistry, 50% risk, 50% rewards, but it means that we are also at the table making joint decisions together around viability, funding, placemaking, and really ensuring that we are accelerating the delivery as much as possible. I think what Farrah referred to as well, I think it's really important for the joint venture approach between public and private sector, which is, being respectful of the expertise that you bring to the table. Vistry, very experienced development, construction managers, sales, placemaking to complement our kind of public sector long-term vision, placemaking, social value, setting the brief in the first place about what we wanted the neighbourhood to be.
So that makes it all sound almost too good to be true. But why aren't all developments done in a joint venture then?
It's horses for courses, and I think it's about the scale and the risk of the project. And that joint ventures don't work for everyone. They're complex to set up and to procure, but it fits this particular project because of the scale of the risk actually. And what I would say in terms of the good times and the bad times is you choose. It's like choosing a partner for life. It is. It's about shared values as well. It's about the relationships as people, because it's about how you work together, and as how you work together through what at the moment are really difficult times in terms of viability for residential. But when you've got a partner who's got the expertise and I think the shared values, you find a way through.
And what sort of period of time are we talking about for this scheme?
So this scheme will be delivering up to the mid-2030s. Okay. So it's 1,000 homes split across 4 schemes. The first phase, we're really hoping to be on site later this year.
Okay, fantastic. And in that time, you can expect that a lot of things are going to change, right? Over a decade of development. So what do you need from your public sector partner in order to enable you to kind of surf over those changes?
As Darren mentioned earlier, adaptability is absolutely key to any regeneration. One of the things that I've always found the most challenging but the most exciting about decision making on master plans like this is you're making a decision today that has an impact in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And you're not going to know all of those answers. If we had that looking glass into the future, I would have won the lottery right now. And it's being able to have that vision and being able to recognise that over time that vision might adapt. And as long as we've got that ability to communicate with our partner and have those sort of honest conversations over time, we can make sure that we are staying light-footed to any changes and challenges in the market.
But how do you build that into a contract? Because a contract's such it's a legal document, isn't it? It's like hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's all writing. No one knows what the words actually mean except the lawyers. So how do you build that level of understanding and relationship into the partnership?
I think it's the contract is fundamental, but I think it's more than the contract. It's things like the business case, and it's things like how we are going to work together and our ethos of how we'll communicate, and making sure that we're taking each partner along in the journey of decision making as well. Mm-hmm. We both have our internal boards and decision makers. We have to make sure that we're also communicating what's coming from that to our JV partners, and make sure that we're being as upfront as early as possible with any changes that are needed. And the shared vision is absolutely key to that. And the business case is something on this JV that we update on an annual basis for that reason, so that we can make sure it's up to date and make sure we know what the key objectives are for the JV. Mm-hmm. And we know we sort of have that as a guide map to the delivery of the scheme as well.
And going back to the kind of the viability of the scheme and the nature of the kind of development itself, presumably just having the land in the joint venture isn't enough to make it viable, because land isn't what it was, right? So what have you had to do in order to get this scheme deliverable?
So the 50-50 share of the risk is very important to that, but also we've worked well with the LLDC to ensure that we protect the design quality of the scheme, but where we can manage costs and delivery, and then also looking at how we can deliver affordable housing, maybe BTR as well as private for sale as well to manage the portfolio.
How does that help?
The BTR delivery allows for, and the affordable delivery allows for a forward funded model, which means that we're getting cash in at the same time as we're spending cash, which is good for the business model.
And is that because you get people renting on build to rent BTR?
Yeah.
People come in and rent. It's quicker to get to that transactional bit than it is if you're selling a house for a private sale.
Yeah, and it's getting the investor in upfront to forward fund the build as well, which reduces the risk for the JV overall as well.
That makes sense. Darren, what's your perspective on that, like unlocking the site through the partnership? What have you had to do?
I think the key message is that land value is only one way for the public sector to get the returns from what it's putting into the JV. So by being partners 50-50, we share in the profits. So it's not that obsession just about the land value. Obviously, we have to be sensible and commercial, but, you know, we look at what we're achieving in the round. You know, that means about the long-term equity returns from the profit by being in the partnership and actually achieving the homes and the place, which is, you know, what we're in it for, to make sure that Pudding Mill Lane gets built and it becomes a vibrant neighbourhood.
And Farrah mentioned that you've taken on 50% of the risk as well. What would you say? Most of the people I talk to are in local authorities, and there's a real kind of caution about taking on development risk. What would you say to them about how that feels corporately?
It's a shared risk, you know, it's a shared risk, and the risk goes to where it can best be managed. And, you know, if you're going to look to transfer risk wholly out of your corporate structure, then you lose value. So it has to be that assessment on a site-by-site basis, what is best for that particular project. And as I say, not being just obsessed with land value, but the long-term returns that can come from actually taking some risk. And the reason that we have Vistry is that they are best placed to help us manage build and construction risk and sales risk, because that's their expertise. I think I'd come back to what I said before. It's about choosing your partner for the project. It's horses for courses. And, you know, whether it's a family-run company, PLC or whatever, people are going to go for peaks and troughs and changes. It's coming back to values and vision. One, that we've kind of contracted with Vistry on the basis of a vision for the project, and also because we believe that they shared a bunch of values in terms of the importance of placemaking. And I would say that about the other joint ventures that we have entered into the park. So to big up Ballymore, who are other joint venture partners on both Bridgewater Triangle and Stratford Waterfront, a very different type of company, not a PLC like Vistry, but a real values-driven company where they put placemaking at the heart of what they do.
How do you understand those values, though? Because you can't write those in a contract, can't you? You can't say, my value is X, my value is Y.
It's about, I think, from the public sector's point of view, having a really strong, clear brief and vision that you're asking the market to respond to. And on all of our joint ventures, we went through a procurement process, and you test the values, you test them not just in the tender submission, but the interviews. You know, it's almost like going on a date before you get married. It's about just as much the people and who you're going to be working with as it is about what's in the contract or the tender document. And you referenced the contract before. My view is the contract's really important, and it sets the framework for how you're supposed to work. But the minute you're pulling out the contract to kind of look at it, something's kind of going wrong. You know, and it's about the culture of the way of working that you build up. And as Farrah said before, our teams are integrated in terms of project and development management, kind of planning and design, so that when there are key difficult decisions, they're being made together. And as I said, Vistry are taking us on the journey.
And we were talking about values from Darren's perspective. What are the values you look for in a public sector partner? How do you test that they're there?
I think it's we look we look for the sort of somebody who's willing to work in partnership with us, somebody who's has a good eye for design quality, has strong sort of sustainability commitments, and also somebody who's willing to, as Darren said earlier, share the risk, and particularly in a JV partner. And I think sharing risk is quite an important one between JV partners, because it ensures that we've all got a bit of skin in the game to ensure that we're working to mitigate those risks as well.
So we're looking, Darren, at the ABBA Voyage. This is a meanwhile use. I mean, it looks as permanent as anything could look. Why do you need meanwhile uses on a scheme like this? What do they bring, and what are the challenges as well?
Well, firstly, I just want to say a little bit about ABBA Voyage, because it's an incredible success. It was a concept that the company came to the park and wanted to trial. You know, they did not know if this was going to be a success. And, you know, almost 4 years later, it's delivered over 2 billion in kind of economic value to the UK economy. It's incredibly successful. And yeah, it's a meanwhile use, and it's not the only one we have in the park. You've just come from Build East, the Construction Skills Academy that we deliver in partnership with Places for London. We have the Park Depot on some of our projects, and at Hackney Bridge this morning, we saw the kind of community space food hall as well. I think it's kind of going back to that idea that this is a long-term regeneration project. And, you know, as landowner, we have to make sure the land is put to good use, not just in terms of commercial economic return, but making sure it's producing social value. We can't do everything everywhere all at once in terms of our investment program. You know, we have to move around as well, particularly from a LLDC point of view when we're using public funding. So, you know, we have a long-term delivery program that takes us up to the mid to late 2030s. So the meanwhile use program is to make sure that the sites are not sitting idle, so to speak.
Yeah. And Farrah, I mean, how important are meanwhile uses over a 10-year period on your single project?
They're extremely important. I think they give people familiarity with the site, which is absolutely helps with getting people to know the project once you're ready to start getting into the sales phase and the delivery phase.
So this is like a perception thing. Something is happening here. It's different from what it was before.
Absolutely, and it's also a way of going back to what Darren said of keeping the site alive whilst we're getting ready for that delivery phase, while we're doing all of the sort of pre-construction elements, the sort of slightly more boring, I love them, but slightly more boring parts such as planning and land drawdown and all of that stuff. It gives the site a bit of life in that time, and it gives something like ABBA because we're looking at it. It adds social value, it adds economic value, but it also gives the wider community something to be talking about, to be excited about. Oh, I live near that ABBA Voyage. Oh, did you go visit? Yeah.
So that's building that resilience in a place that's going through a lot of change. You're creating some resilience in the community. Are you planning other sort of meanwhile uses on your sites over the next 10 years? And if so, is that process happening right now? What sort of things are you thinking of bringing forward?
Can I talk about that?
Yeah.
I do.
We have a very exciting proposition for another phase of Pudding Mill Lane.
Yeah.
It's an expansion of Build East, the Construction Skills Academy, who've been trialling and piloting a program for retrofit. So not skills needed for new build, but for the large decarbonisation program, particularly in London, connected to the Warmer Homes Initiative.
Right.
There's a huge skill shortage in that area, and we're looking to expand that academy to a second location at Pudding Mill Lane. Subject to funding, we think that will be London's first retrofit skills academy, you know, training local young people in the kind of green jobs needed for the future.
But these are meanwhile uses. When ABBA Voyage goes and the Skills Academy goes, doesn't that create a kind of vacuum, a sense of loss for those communities that are bought into those uses?
It is always difficult, and I've worked in regen a long time, and I know there's been a lot of, if we build it and we have to move it, that's going to cause us problems. It's about really clear communication that is in meanwhile use from the beginning, and although things do become established, it's about just making the case that we have to kind of generate value, social and economic, for our sites in the meantime. And I think once we incubate really interesting concepts like ABBA or Skills Academy, they can go to other parts of London because we've proved the concept.
And that's it for another episode of 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge, sponsored by Redloft and by Vistry. And that's it from the Olympic Park and the London Legacy Development Corporation. But we are going to be back with more public sector housing delivery soon. So like and subscribe and you won't miss those episodes.